More Torah reading? Are you sure? How did I get so lucky? Hope it's about Yom Kippur and atoning for stuff. Greetings, hero. It is I, your friendly neighborhood rabbi, and you're in luck because today we are in fact going to talk about the Torah readings for Yom Kippur. And yes, they are about Yom Kippur and also holiness and also atonement and a fish. But we'll save the fish for last. But first, if you're joining us for the first time and you haven't seen any other videos about the high holy days and other fall holidays this year, you should know that this is part of a 31-day Jewish fall holiday learning challenge. If you feel challenge-worthy, make sure at some point in your life you click on the first link that you see in the show notes below. You'll get a downloadable guide to all the major Jewish holidays this year. You'll get 31 emails with links to videos in this challenge. I'll talk about that more at the end of this video, but for now, let's talk about these special Torah readings for Yom Kippur. As we discussed in Rosh Hashanah, reading from the Torah in Jewish services is usually not a choose-your-own-adventure affair. Every Shabbat has its prescribed reading that Jews around the world are all reading at the same time. Every holiday has a particular reading, and Yom Kippur, last I checked, was a holiday. So it has readings that all the Jews in the world are reading on this holiday. Why not join the fun? We actually have two different parts of the day where scriptures are read. First is the morning service. After the preliminary and shacharit morning prayers, we get into a Torah service, and in that Torah service, we read from the book of Leviticus, specifically chapter 16. Chapter 16 of Leviticus talks all about how Aaron, our original high priest, and transitively the high priest after him, would do a service that atoned for the sins of the people Israel. And since this is the Day of Atonement after all, we read that whole chapter 16 in the Yom Kippur morning Torah service, divided up into a certain number of readings. And included in that chapter is one of the mentions in the Torah of Yom Kippur and when you're supposed to do it. It's the 10th of Tishrei, BTW, a day of complete rest where we afflict our souls. That's in that reading on Yom Kippur, in case anybody showed up and didn't know what we were doing that day. Just randomly happened to be wearing a suit and wanted to go to a synagogue. That's the bulk of our reading in the morning. And like other holidays or certain Shabbats, the Maftir reading isn't a continuation of that Leviticus chapter 16, but it's a special Maftir from the book of Numbers, chapter 29, from Parshat Pinchas, that lays out the specific sacrifices that you're supposed to make on Yom Kippur like it does for the other holidays. At least we did back when we were doing temple sacrifices. And then there is a Haftarah reading. That is a selection from the books of the prophets that has a similar theme or some kind of connection to the Torah reading that we do that day. And so of course, we're going to have Isaiah chapter 57 and 58. Isaiah, or Yeshayahu in Hebrew, was not just a prophet, but a prominent social critic during the children of Israel's time of abundance before our exile. And in this particular section, he is looking at people who are religiously punctilious. That is, they think they're doing everything right. They're doing all the right sacrifices. They're fasting when they're supposed to fast. And yet somehow their lives aren't perfect. And they blame this on God. And what Isaiah has to say about that is, you guys, you're missing the point. It's his famous speech that says, is this the fast that God requires? Doing everything right by the book, starving yourselves, hurting yourselves? That's how you get atonement? And God, through Isaiah, says, no, what you should be doing is using this as an opportunity to wake up your sensibilities for people who have to fast every day, not because they're religious, but because they are broke. Fasting one day a year should make you sensitive to the needs of people who are hungry all the time. Setting aside your comfortable leather shoes and other stuff should make you sensitive to the people who don't have shoes, period. And so in effect, this fast isn't just for your improvement, it's for the improvement of the whole world, starting with one just society. That's it for the readings for the morning service. If you stick around for the afternoon service, and really, where do you have to go? A lot of people just, if there's like a break, there'll be some learning or meditation or napping. Some people just sack out right there on the pews and go to sleep, and they wait for the afternoon Mincha service, where there's some prayers and an Amidah, but also an afternoon Torah service, just like there is on Shabbat. This service also has a reading that's divided between the Torah and a Haftarah from the books of the prophets. Only this time, the reading from the prophets is an entire book. More on that in a sec. The Torah reading, once again, is a selection from the book of Leviticus. Now, I said there was no choose-your-own-adventure here, but there can be a dichotomy as to what is read in the Mincha Torah service. There are a couple of different traditions about this, and it pays to know which tradition your community follows. So just ask them ahead of time or wait to see how it comes up. One tradition of long standing is that the Torah reading for Yom Kippur afternoon is from Leviticus 18. Now, Leviticus 18 largely concerns itself with sexual deviation. You shouldn't sleep with family members. You shouldn't sleep with animals. And also contains the passage that a man should not sleep with another man like a man does with a woman. Now, this selection of reading is not popular in some communities because just like the rest of the religious world, the Jewish world is divided on the traditional view of homosexual relationships. There is another tradition that emerged where a community will read from chapter 19, which is sort of the core of the holiness code. And it begins with this notion that we are holy because God is holy, and God gives us these rules to attain holiness, such as not insulting a deaf person or putting a stumbling block in front of the blind or standing idly by the blood of your neighbor. Communities have different reasons for these different choices, and feel free to ask the rabbi or somebody else who's running services what choice your community's made so you're prepared for the readings that you do. After this, there is a Haftarah, and on Yom Kippur, the Haftarah is the entire book of Jonah. Jonah is the story of a prophet who was selected by God to go warn the city of Nineveh that the entire city would be destroyed if they didn't atone and turn around and make tshuva. Jonah, who thought that kind of message would make him very unpopular in Nineveh, ran away. But once God picks you for a job, you gotta do the job, or apparently God sends a giant fish to swallow you up and spit you out on the shores of Nineveh. Thing is, being spit out by a fish isn't the end of a story. It's just getting good. What happens is Jonah completes his job, tells Nineveh to atone, and they do. And they're fine. Tshuva works. What a message for Yom Kippur. Trouble is, Jonah is ticked off by this. He said, really, it was that simple. Why is it so simple? If they were so bad, why didn't they get any kind of punishment? All I had to do was confess, and they did, and they're fine. This seems terribly unjust to I, Jonah, who lived in a fish. And God says to Jonah, do you think I wanted to destroy them? I sent you so that I wouldn't have to. You may not care about the fate of these strangers, but this is like 120,000 people who I've known their entire lives. And it's important that they know that tshuva works, that people can improve, and it's important for you, Jonah, to know it's on everybody to help make that happen. And don't begrudge people who turn their lives around. I don't know if you've ever felt this, but sometimes I've seen people who've turned their lives around. I'm like, well, they should still get punished for what they did wrong before they did that. And look, that's not on me to make that judgment. And that is another important message of Yom Kippur. So as you can see, we have multiple readings about the theme of atonement, about the theme of holiness, and about the theme of the effectiveness of self-improvement through tshuva or repentance during this holiday season. These are the assigned readings for Yom Kippur. Go do your homework. Next time, we're actually going to go back into the service to talk about another piece of this service that happens on Yom Kippur, but also happens on Sukkot and other holidays throughout the year, and that's called Yizkor, Gesundheit. I think that joke's getting pretty old. If you want to make sure you receive not only that video, but all the videos of this series, in addition to a downloadable holiday guide, click on the first link in the show notes below, get hooked up with our challenge, or click on that orange square over there for the exact same reason and effect. Super excited to learn with you today, and until next time, hero, peace, and also atonement, and a fish.